Hey you, welcome back to It Will Run. In this episode we're talking about engines, drivetrains, horsepower, torque. If you were one of the lucky souls to order a second generation Econoline in 1968 to 1974, you had three engine choices: a 240 straight six, a 300 straight six, or a 302 V8. They all seem to be about the same horsepower rating from what I can find. It's tough pinning down exactly what horsepower an engine was rated for in a particular year. The 240 and the 300 are so similar. It's the same block and it's the same bore. The only difference between the two of them is the stroke and the combustion chambers in the head. You'll find wide ranges. You'll find some sites I found had the 240 with more horsepower than the 300, and I know that's not correct. So I'm just sticking with the thought process that it takes about 150 horsepower to move one of these vans. Right before I started disassembling my 73 Econoline, I went to the scrapyard. After I unloaded all my scrap, I was completely empty. The only thing in the entire van was a driver's seat. No passenger seat, no bench seat, no tools, nothing. So when I stepped out of that van and got off the scale, it weighed exactly 3,400 pounds. I started looking up similar vehicles, minivans or small shorty vans, looking at their weight and what their horsepower was for that weight. A few examples would be a 1973 Volkswagen bus, weighed 2,877 pounds. It came with a 1.7 liter engine, and that engine had 65 horsepower. In 1986 and 1987, you could get a Ford Aerostar minivan with a 2.3 liter four-cylinder, the Lima engine, the same engine that they put in the Thunderbirds, the TurboCoupes, the Rangers. That engine had 100 horsepower, right on the money, and weighed 3,750 pounds, which is kind of in the neighborhood of what I'm pushing. I'm looking at like 4,000 or 4,200 pounds, something like that. Even the Toyota Sienna minivan, first generation, was 3,973 pounds, basically 4,000 pounds. And that came with a 3-liter V6 that was capable of 194 horsepower. My initial hope was I could use a modern Ford engine, like a modern EcoBoost. I found a guy on YouTube. He bought a totaled Mustang. He bought the whole car for the engine and the transmission. That engine compartment in the Ranger is a lot wider than what the Econoline is. And seeing what he went through to get that 2.3 EcoBoost in that Ranger made me realize that I was not going to be able to find a modern, lightweight, partially aluminum, turbocharged engine with like a 6-speed transmission is what I would really love to have. But I could tell after watching some videos and seeing what other guys were doing that it wasn't going to be feasible. So I went back to the drawing board, and what I came up with was a 1993 Mustang 2.3 liter.
They're all gonna laugh at you.
With an A4LD transmission. So what this engine has going for it are a few things. One, it's 180 pounds lighter than the 302 V8 that was in the van to begin with. So I can add an electric motor right next to it and still be at the same weight that I was before I pulled the V8. I know that I can make this engine produce 80 horsepower if I want, but I can also make it 150 horsepower. There's a company called Stinger that sells aftermarket computers where the factory harness just plugs right in to this computer. I know that if I can get 150 horsepower out of this 2.3 liter, that it is at least as powerful as the engine that would have come in the van, that was offered in the van. And it was only 50 bucks. I knew that I could scrap it and get my $50 back if it came down to it, if I decided on a different engine or just decided this wasn't going to work, or if it had more damage than what I realized, then I could just take it to the scrapyard and get my money back. Originally, I was going to tear the engine down until I found the damage, find out what was going on with it. If it was just something as simple as a head gasket, then I was going to just reassemble it, put a head gasket on it, stick it in the van, even with the transmission the way that it was when I picked it up from the guy, and just see how it moved the van. See if it was gonna work, if I had to add turbo or do a larger exhaust do the trick. Hey, like my engine? This is my Ford.
Picked this up off Facebook in Akron for 50 bucks with the transmission, A4LD transmission. The guy said that the number 2 cylinder has little to no compression. So that's the first thing we got to figure out, is what's going on with cylinder number 2. Is it a cracked head? Is it a blown head gasket? Hopefully it's a blown head gasket. I'm going to bring the two of you along while I tear this down, try to get you in there as close as possible. I'm going to start by taking the top half apart, because I really want to get that head off and look at the combustion chamber, especially number 2.
Right. Bunch of burn oil. So this thing was 100%. Smells like straight fuel. Get leverage, to make a small wrench longer to get leverage. That's all I'm gonna do here to get these intake bolts out. Another one over here. So these 2.3 liters. Why don't you count how many times I say 2.3 liter, by the way? I'm already annoying myself. These Ford 4 cylinders come out of the factory. Some say 91 horsepower, some say 110 horsepower. So I gotta look in to see if the Mustang and Ranger had something different, maybe a different exhaust or something that bumped the horsepower up on one of them. The antifreeze, yeah. It's Essex plant.
think that's what that means on there. Can you see that? It says Essex on there. I don't think this is just going to lift off of here, obviously. But let's find out first. Yeah, that's a no-go. Can we try a pry bar first? Alright. Now it's going to come off of that. Here we go. Let's find out what's going on. Yep. What do we got? Oh. Yeah, you guys gotta see this. Wow, what the? That is not good. And that is not good. These look fine. So this is 3, this is 4, this is 2. Oh man, look at that.
As you can see, it was more than just a head gasket. It had some major damage going on.
This is number 4. Number 3. Number 2. Number 1.
Before I went any further once I found the head damage, before I went any further as far as taking the block into the machine shop or taking the transmission in or doing anything, I needed to make sure that I could locate a head. And these heads just happened to be known for the valve seats receding into the engine and allowing the valve to slam up against the cylinder head inside the combustion chamber. Once that seat starts to work its way into the head farther, then the valve actually closes farther. So with these heads kind of being known for this issue, I was worried that there might not be a lot of these heads available in junkyards and so forth, because they've been picked through pretty good. I managed to locate a head at a junkyard up in Northeast Ohio in Ashtabula, Ohio. So this head is obviously trashed. I started to take it to the machine shop last week, and I took pictures before I loaded it, and when I zoomed in I could see that there was actually a crack in between the valves in the head, so it's not a matter of just replacing the valve seats. This one was good, but this one right here was done. So I went to the junkyard last week, picked up this one, which seems to be in good shape. I'm going to take it into the machine shop today, have him look at it and compare the cams and see if one's better than the other. It kind of seems like the original cam might be in better shape. It's got a little wear right there. This is the junkyard head. They're identical, same year, everything. Same vehicle, Mustang. The block actually doesn't look too bad. The mains don't look bad. Quite a bit of wear on that main there, which would be the front #1 cylinder right there. So I don't know what the deal is there, but the cylinders look good. I don't see any scratches at all in the cylinders. Crank. Again, doesn't really show a lot of wear. Even on that main there where the bearing's all worn in the block, does not look bad at all. I did find one thing. The bracket that holds the crank sensor on the front of the block is broke. See that ear? It's broke off of there. Should look like that. Look what it did to the crank sensor. You can see where it was sitting cockeyed inside of there, and the pulley was coming around and gouging it. So I'm gonna have to try to find a new bracket, or not a new one. I'm gonna have to find a bracket at a junkyard, and then possibly replace that sensor there. I don't know if I can trust it the way it's been dug into. Taking the transmission into a local transmission shop while I'm at it today. It's an A4LD Mustang. It's got overdrive, and friend of mine runs a transmission shop here in town, says that he can beef it up a little bit, make it a little more heavy duty, more like a Ranger transmission. So, but he's gonna have it a while, so I'm gonna get it in now. Hopefully I'm not ready for it before he's done. Trying to run this van out of gas. I've got to drop the tank down to put an electric pump in it, but the fuel gauge doesn't work, so I have no clue, but when it swishes back and forth, it sounds like quite a bit of fuel. So I've got my gas can here, so when I do run out of gas, I can get home. The transmission fluid is leaking like a sieve, so I'm carrying fluid with me. All right, on the road.
Oh yeah, okay. Got twin plugs on it, all that.
Correct.
I remember that now.
Okay.
Then I'll give you a call.
I didn't know how that breather comes out of there.
It's just pressed in. It's just kind of, yeah. Like everything.
Yep. Once I had everything dropped off at the machine shop and my transmission guy had the transmission, I had a list of things that I was gonna need, things that you can't buy aftermarket, things that are no longer made by Ford. I knew that I was gonna need some things. Even if I don't end up using those parts, I needed them to be able to plan, to see. I wanted to know, okay, how did Ford do it? Am I gonna do it that way, or am I gonna customize it somehow? I ended up finding a complete 93 Mustang in South Bend, Indiana at an LKQ salvage yard. And in the pictures, it looked like nobody had even touched this thing. But of course, they take the picture the day that the car comes in before anybody starts pulling parts off of it. And then they don't update the picture. They don't update the site. They don't tell you what's been taken from it and what's still available. But in the picture, this thing looked like it just rolled in, like somebody drove it to the junkyard and sold it. And it had everything that I needed, everything on my list. So I left Ohio at 6 a.m. and got there at 9:15 and spent the entire day there on that one car, on that one Mustang. And I stayed there until they came out with a bullhorn and yelled last call at 4:45, grab your tools, get out of the yard, we're closing. But I did get everything that I ended up needing. I got the throttle pedal, the throttle cable, the kick down cable, the transmission linkage, the cruise control, the entire wire harness, other than a couple plugs that had been cut off. I did get the crank sensor that I needed, the air box, the air tube going from the air box to the throttle body, the computer, and most importantly, I was able to look at every plug, look at the color of the wires before I unplugged anything. So things that stayed with that car, such as, well, the engine, the oxygen sensor. Before I unplugged things, I was able to record it, take a picture and say, okay, the oxygen sensor is black and white, you know, the wires. The cruise control is, so when I'm incorporating this wiring harness into the van, I'll know about where things go. I can locate a plug with the colors and know that it goes in the engine compartment, or this plug goes underneath the dash or by the steering column. And I think it's gonna help. It's gonna save me some research time. Okay, well, I'm gonna say 2.3 liter a few more times before I leave you. And I'm gonna do so while talking about this 7-second beast. And no, I'm not claiming that this race car has a stock 2.3 liter in it, or it even has a Ford block or a Ford intake or anything left. And I'm not claiming that my engine can be slightly modified to perform like this engine. I just thought I'd give you something to chew on while my 2.3's at the machine shop and my transmission's getting beefed up. Show you what 800 plus horsepower looks like from a 2.3 liter.